Good evening, everybody. My name is Mart McClellan, and I'm president of MacWealth Management. And on behalf of my partner, Tim Stride, and the MacWealth team, we'd like to welcome you to this month's MacWealth Live event. We're extremely excited about this topic. We do numerous meetings such as this, but we believe this is the genesis of everything that we do from a financial planning standpoint. And it's really the concept of accelerating wealth over just accumulating wealth. Before I get started, of course, people are coming in, excuse me on that. This is not financial advice. This is for informational purposes only. Please speak to your advisor as necessary. Certainly, we'd be more than happy to chat with you as well. And past performance is no guarantee of future results. Now, most of you know that I am a trained dentist as well as orthodontist from Northwestern as well as Michigan. And by the way, great win by Michigan this weekend, beating the Buckeyes. But well, that's just huge. That was just fantastic, by the way. I can rub that in them because we were like 20-point dogs in that game. So that was a big win for us. But certainly when we get out of dental school and orthodontic programs, there's a lot of obstacles in front of us, such as do you associate, do you start your own business, do you go in with somebody and learn how to run a business, which we're not trained on these things in dental school, right? And the same thing goes with financial planning. The financial planning, the education in America today is just abysmal. And so we're sort of thrown to the wolves. And so once we get out, we tend to follow the herd. We just follow along, do what everybody else is doing. And I found out very soon that the traditional way was not the way I wanted to go through life. And I don't believe there's any coincidences in life, but it's just by chance my dental school classmate called me up while I was working on patients one day. He says, "Hey, you may want to meet with this guy. He changed my life financially, and may want to sit down with him." I said, "Okay." Anytime I get a warm referral, I'm always open to talking with somebody. And it's at that time that I met my now partner and best friend, Tim Stride. And when I first met him, he told me, "Hey, I'm going to tell you right out of the gate, my opinion is no better than anybody else's opinion. But if the person who's pitching you something can't prove it, then you have to throw it out as an opinion and as misinformation." And it's very interesting in the world we live in dentistry and healthcare. We all believe in evidence-based healthcare or medicine, yet nobody believes in evidence-based financial planning or evidence-based financial advice, because if they did, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. And so, and the way he said, how I can prove that is that you have to use some sort of a mechanism or a game board to analyze financial decisions. And the model you see in front of you is that type of scientific game board or laboratory. And every financial decision that you or I can make will fall somewhere on this model, where there's protection component, insurance products, savings component, investments, your cash flow, and your debt. And he also told me the concept, which was the game changer, which is kind of the mainstay of this conversation tonight, is on acceleration. Because when you keep money in motion or velocitize it, you reach your goals much faster. And so the main thing on this model is, you may see it there, that little orange box S1 says the WCA or checking, that says the wealth coordination account or the wealth freedom account. Now, we've always believed this. The gentleman who created this system back in the 80s, it is sort of the beginning point of everything we do from a cash flow standpoint. And then the money moves from there once it gets put into this particular area. The problem is we always had to do it manually. And manually, you have to be very disciplined to do this in the exact right way. Fortunately, in the world we're living in today, with capitalism and innovation, people like the people on this call tonight, Vince and his partner Dave, they invented a technology to automate this process. So now you can deploy assets, you can deploy your money in a much faster way, and it's done without having to work too hard at it. And so, with that being said, I'm going to introduce my mentor of 20 years now. Tim was with him 30 years ago, showing our age. I knew Vince when he had a little more hair on his head, and we were both
a lot more hair.
Yeah, we're a little less gray, both of us. But Vince is a titan in our industry. He is just so well respected. He's a Hall of Famer in many different spheres, estate planning and others. And he's going to be really talking about the topic of acceleration. And we're going to really flip the switch from accumulation because in the world we live in today, it's all about accumulation. And that's exactly the opposite of what you want to be thinking about. So with that being said, Vince, I'm going to pass the reins over to you, and we'll have a great conversation here for the next 40 to 45 minutes.
Great.
And if anybody has any questions in the chat, please feel free to chime in there. We're here to educate you as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, we'll try to get to them all in the hour allotted. Mark, could you unshare so I could share?
Yeah, I just did.
Very good.
There you go.
And hopefully you're seeing flipping the switch on wealth accumulation, wealth
Yep.
acceleration. Yes.
Yep, it's there. Yep.
Amazing. Okay. So thank you for inviting me to be your speaker this month. I think that our topic is very important. It's especially important for professionals who have the potential to have meteoric growth in their incomes. I've been doing this literally for 45 years, and I can tell you without planning, the future is not bright. Like you have to have tools and techniques that are going to allow you to end up accumulating as much as is humanly possible. So I really want to start the conversation with two questions. And the first, Mart, for you is, the call is loaded with professionals. What do they face in their careers? What's their career path look like? What do they have in front of them?
Well, the first one, of course, is when they finish up, what do they do with their career in terms of starting a business or going with an associateship, joining a corporate entity. But the big problem, the biggest obstacle I see, at least from the traditional financial planning standpoint, is that the amount of misinformation out there really puts people in how would I say, the wrong seat. The research shows now that dentists and every dentist we meet, by the way, as well as most Americans, when they get to retirement, they're going to take a significant pay cut um, in their income when they get to retirement. And that's totally unnecessary. And that's a huge obstacle because we're being spoon-fed all this information that is not necessarily in the best interest of the client. Maybe it's better in the best interest of the rules makers, as we know, the government and corporations and financial institutions. And so the big obstacle, and then unfortunately too, is we all get busy in life, and next thing you know, it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. And as dentists, we get a later start in life, and they 50 years old, people are like, oh man, I thought it'd be further along down the road than I actually was. And it's not to do no fault of their own. It's just life gets in the way of that.
Right. So it's interesting because what you spoke of is some financial obstacles, but I'm going to frame that a little differently. If you think about it, you get out of dental school, professional school of any type, and now you're looking at how you're going to craft your practice. Are you going to go into somebody else's firm, start your own, like all those pieces? But throughout your entire life, your entire financial life, there are going to be ambitions that you have that you want to fulfill on. Let's start with buying into a practice, right? So buying into a practice, buying a new home, certainly either paying off your school debt or starting to figure out how you're going to fund college for your kids. And all of these are economic drains on your world. And those downward pressures is what, Mart, you alluded to, that people take this massive haircut when they stop working. There's also an illusion that you can work forever, right? So my personal dentist, who was literally my dentist for like 30 plus years, one day she's told me, she said, Vince, I just want to tell you that in a couple of years, you're going to have to look for a new dentist. And I go, why, Debbie, why are you leaving me? And she says, you get to a point, like 70 years old, my eyes aren't going to be as sharp. My back's not going to be able to take it. And I'm going to retire. Like that's the plan. I'm done at 70. And some are done at 65, but you very rarely see a professional that's in 75, 80 years old, especially when they're bending over a chair, right? So you have to have a structure that enables you to accumulate wealth. And what we've created, and by the way, just so you know, this technology goes back 17 years. I would say for the first 10 years of the 17, it was all mechanical, but it was astonishing how well it worked. And then we built the technology to automate it and take that wealth coordination account that Mart was talking about and really setting you up so that way you would be automated. And the technology is called Currence, Currence. And I'm brought here to you today, obviously, by Macro Wealth Management. So, what is it? What are the things that impact your life going forward? And specifically, I'm talking about your ability to have free cash flow to accumulate for all the things in life that you need, which includes paying off the debts, buying a new home, buying a practice, and most certainly retirement. So the number one thing that shows up that will keep you broke and kill your chances of achieving financial freedom is lifestyle creep. It's literally a problem that affects just about everybody in the world because the root of the problem is embedded in our DNA. And you've all heard this, the more you make, the more you spend. And Americans are really good at that. I think actually North Americans, or I can't speak to anybody in South America or Europe, although I have a feeling behaviorally they're all driven by the same result. So the truth is that all people, all income brackets are spending more on things that they don't need. And movements have been popping up like minimalism, frugal living, et cetera, that employ budgeting, personal finance, essentialism, spending less, making more, saving money, investing, and much more. And people are starting to become aware of the trap they've gotten themselves into. Now, the idea for everybody on this call is to not notice the trap when you're 55 and you got 10 years, runway, right? Or 15 years runway. And it's true that while lifestyle creep is the major reason why 64% of US consumers live paycheck to paycheck, the fact is it can affect anyone. Um, you're not going to not go forward. There you go. Okay. 40% of those making $100,000 or more live paycheck to paycheck. And even the rich and famous, for even the rich and famous, the lifestyle creep is the reason why 80% of former NFL players go bankrupt just 2 years after retiring. There used to be a website called gamesover.org. It's a charitable organization that studied football play, actually all professional sports athletes. And you would hear stories about people that made a fortune during their careers and 4 years later broke, 2 years later broke, like broke, bankrupt, broke, like, the inability to live. I think Mike Tyson had a fight a few weeks ago with Jake somebody. I don't, but they, you
Yeah,
know, but he got $20 million for that fight. But I think Mike Tyson went bankrupt twice. Twice. Now, if he didn't make a movie like um, the one with the bachelor
The
party and
Bachelor. Yeah,
yeah, and the fight, like he'd be done, right? He's not like George Foreman with the George Foreman grill that's made money just because he was a representative of a toaster, basically, right? So it's a massive problem. Now, the median savings account balance for Americans under 35 years old is just over $3,000. And they say that the baby boom generation, which I'm part of, they can't put 50% of them can't put their hands on $1,000. Why is that? It's because all these things that interfere, right? So the first thing you need to realize for all of you on this call is it's not you. It's just not. Instant gratification is hardwired into our DNA. It's in the nature of being human. So even that happens for the smartest and most successful ones. Like I've known people that were literally rocket scientists who were broke. And to give you a little bit more biology on that, so the money, food, and sex is controlled by the early brain, the limbic system, right? And so if you think about, a million years ago, because we've been around on the planet for something like 2 million years in one form or another, but if you think about it, if we slew the woolly mammoth, there was no refrigeration. We had to eat it right away because otherwise you can't store it, and you didn't know when you were going to get another one. So behaviorally, we're used to consuming all that there is, and sophistication doesn't get us out of it. Now, research shows that our spending habits are affected by our values, emotions, and desires. Instant gratification is wired into all of us, and it doesn't help that we are constantly bombarded by different excuses for spending money. In our modern consumer society, it's easier than ever to find things to spend our hard earned money on, and they make it super easy. I mean, the most amazing thing about Amazon is you click a box button, and all of a sudden something shows up at your doorstep. Like a day later, if you're Amazon Prime, or 2 days later, if you're in the country. But like the point is that it takes nothing for us to consume. Unconscious consumption, whoopsie, unconscious consumption is driven by our tendency to prioritize things that pay off closer to the present, and that's known as present bias, and our tendency to prioritize things that come first, known as primacy bias. Instant gratification is embedded in our DNA. It's a natural instinct. Spending money as opposed to saving provides an instant feeling of gratification and control. Delayed gratification is something that must be forged. It is not easy and it takes work. Healthy eating, working out, education, finance all requires it. Hard to do because it requires a conscious effort. It's very difficult to overcome because it involves understanding your emotional relationship with money. Now, I've spent an entire lifetime not exercising, but I've decided that I want to live longer. So, like every day for the last month, I've been getting up at 5 a.m. and doing an hour of exercise. And if I were alone, I would not be able to do it, but I have a life partner, domestic partner, Jessica, lives with me, and we have committed to each other that that's what we're going to do every day. So the forging of the behavior is one step, but having accountability and accountability partner is the second. Now, unconscious consumption is all around us. We are living in a digital sphere of consumerism. We are always online. We're smartphone obsessed. That's the culture. We're constantly bombarded with ads. Experts estimate they were exposed to somewhere between 4,000 and 10,000 highly targeted ads every single day. And these ads are trying to sell us products with the promise that they'll make us happier. Now, when I say ad, that could be a Nike swoosh on somebody's shirt or hat. It could be a hat that says Caterpillar on it. But we are constantly being bombarded with messages. And when we go to a movie, the product placements are all over. So we can't escape this. It is with us at all times. Social media and all the data these companies have on us is itself designed to keep us in lifestyle creep mode. So to summarize the challenges of life, lifestyle creep is the number one thing that will keep you broke and kill you. And it'll damage your ability to achieve financial freedom. Now, we call this the financial hamster wheel, and it's a problem that affects just about everybody in the world because the root of the problem is embedded in our DNA. So let's say you've been working at your first job and you do it for a while and you get your first raise. Well, you know what? You got more money. You decide to move into a nicer apartment or get a nicer car. And all the time you're wondering to yourself, why did I never have enough money left at the end of the month? And the reason why is because you spent more because you had more. So maybe you take on another job or more hours when you run out of money. So you work hard and you get a raise. And you're constantly in this cyclical process where you're running, and you feel like you're standing still. And when we interview prospects and clients of ourselves and of others, this is what they all say. It's like, we don't understand how it happens. This is the financial hamster wheel that we all experience. Now, again, I'm here to tell you that it's not your fault. The world is designed to take our money from us, and we're predisposed to fall prey. And as Mart alluded to earlier, on top of all that, you're getting terrible or mediocre financial advice that's taking you down a bad road without evidence. So the whole process that Mart uses is really about proving out how financial strategy works. My role here is to show you that what feeds all that is free cash flow, and there is a possibility of a future that's extraordinary. So we really need to understand the problem. And the problem that we all face is the fundamental structure of the way we've designed our cash flow. So the default pattern or structure of spending first leads to unconscious consumption. What is that? We get a paycheck and we drop it into our checking account. And from that, all of our expenses come. And our financial freedom, every one of us on the call, every one of us who's not on the call, everyone in America has their financial freedom at the bottom of this food chain. And for most, financial freedom is a trade-off for shopping online or subscriptions or going to dinner. And we're not saying don't do that, but there is a different structural solution we'll talk about in a second. So in the physical world, we actually are taking our earnings and dropping it into a place where we're going to pay our expenses. So our checking accounts are not investments, they're not savings, they are organized in our brain as a way to spend money. And if there's anything left over at the end of the month, we might drop it into savings. Now, I doubt that there's anybody in this call who hasn't at one point, when they got out of college or got out of professional school, heard the words save first, spend second. It's a platitude that we've all been told by our uncle, our father, our mother, like somebody that mattered to us. But the reality is that we're not taught how to do that. So to gain control, you need to flip the switch on your spending and savings choices. And with one simple shift in the direction of cash flow, you move your financial freedom to be at the top of the financial food chain. So it sounds easy. And with the right structure and technology and guidance to help you, it really is. So you want to have your financial freedom ahead of us. And what we learned, and this is from 17 years of study, is that if we drop your money into savings first and then pay yourselves, quote unquote, a salary from there, you will naturally accumulate money. The problem is that it's very difficult to gain insight into that structure. And so what we did, Dave Mozica and I, was we built a technology that is attached to this savings environment called that's the reservoir. So Currence is technology attached to the reservoir. And what that does is it architects your cash flow, putting you in the default savings position. So the reservoir captures every new dollar that comes into your life and orchestrates your cash flow, putting you in control of your choices. So instead of being at the effect of your checking/expense account, you're now in a state of choice about what to do with accumulated money. And what we found is that when professionals or executives or business owners are in the position to make a choice, they will actually naturally choose to save. And what the Currence application does, that whole technology and structure, is it helps keep us connected to you and helps us be the best versions of ourselves, getting you to the best version of yourself. So how does it work? Well, Currence brings together the psychology of making choices with modern mobile technology and solves the cash flow structure issues we just talked about. So, and by the way, that's a picture of or a page from the handheld application, your app on your phone. So the background problem that we're solving is something we call unconscious consumption. So we talked about financial gravity, that pulling of our wealth into the abyss. But if you looked at it more macroeconomically, over your lifetimes, you're going to earn a fortune. And we're going to do a math example for you in a little bit, just to prove that out. So you have money, you have income that's probably rising every year into the future. And there'll be bumps along the way, of course. Like a COVID could put you out for a little bit, but then you're back in the saddle and your income continues to rise. But because of the nature of being human, and because of this default structure, which is dropping money into a checking account, your expenses rise to meet your income. And you spend the bulk of your lifetime chasing that gap. And by the way, your financial advisor is like sweating out how you're going to make ends meet based on that gap, which is really not accelerating the way you would like it to. You literally spend what you make. Now, when we insert currents, what happens is your income is going to do what your income does. But your spending, your consumption is going to travel on a non-correlated path. And you'll see an example of that in a few moments. We're not saying you're not going to spend more in the future. You're just going to be in a state of choice about what you're going to consume, which is very different than I just got a pay raise and where'd the money go? Okay. And the beauty is that you get to live inside of that gap, which causes success. So what I'm going to do, Mart, is I'm going to swing over to a calculator
Okay.
that will demonstrate the effect. And I've already populated it with some things here. So let's say I'm dealing with a 30-year-old, okay, who's got a theoretical 35 years to retirement. And by the way, I could do this at any age. And if you want to, ask me a question about that later, that's fine. And what I did here to start, our starting point, is that we have inflows, meaning net after-tax cash flow of $100,000. That's where this particular client is starting at age 30. And furthermore, they have a burn rate, meaning their consumption rate is $95,000. Now, why can I say that successfully? Because if you happen to, and I'm not recommending that you do because there's a lot of stuff there, but if you went to the Federal Reserve website, St. Louis Federal Reserve, they have a set of data, a data set called FRED, F-R-E-D, and you just put in savings rate, and you'll discover that the average savings rate in the United States has been like 5% since like 1972, right? We saved more prior to 72, and we saved a lot of money in COVID because we weren't going to work and we weren't going to dinner and we weren't spending money. But what that dropped down to is a very low number. We actually hit like a little over 2% a few months ago, and it just popped up, I think, to around 5. But on the average, it's a terrible number. Like you cannot live in the future at 5%. I'll demonstrate that in a second. So here you have this $100,000 of income and $95,000 of burn rate. And because, life is going to do what life does, let's pretend for a moment that your income is going to rise at 5% a year, which would not be unreasonable. Now, for some of you that, you get a partnership and a practice, your income could rise. But then, of course, you may have debt associated with that. So your income will fall. But let's look at a linear example just to make it easy. Now, if you're American, North American, certainly, your income is likely going to rise with income. Your consumption is going to rise with income. So let's put in 5% here. And what you see is the 100,000 is rising at 5. You can see that in this column with the red. And you can see consumption is rising at 5. That's the green. If you look at the delta, the differential between the two, which is this rightmost column, you'll see, yeah, every year you're saving more money. There's no doubt you're saving more money. But it's a slow haul. Now, I haven't included any return here, but I'm going to do a demonstration that I think is pretty important. So let's say, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, and we go back to, Mart's disclosure slides that, we're not making an investment recommendation here, but let's say hypothetically that you could get 5% after tax on your money. I don't know if you think that's good or bad, but that's our starting point. You get 5% on your money. Well, that cash flow that you literally saved for 35 years, okay, got to be $965,000. Let's go back for a second. So if I add up all of the money you put in the deal, that's the $5,000 increasing at 5% per annum. That's $451,000 that you put into your savings mechanism. Then I say, well, wait a second, you got 5% of the tax. That only gets you to $965,000. Now, if we weren't having this conversation and I said to any one of you on this call, how could I make that better? Your first and most important choice that you would make is, I need more return, right? I need more return, right? Mart, how many times have you heard that in your career?
That's it. I mean, it's always that.
Always,
I need to chase the rate of return because
always,
that's the only way for me to get out of my problem. And
right.
then what does that do? It creates more problems.
Well, let's take a look. So let's pretend for a second that you found an investment advisor with a magic wand that's going to get you 8% after tax, which by the way is almost an impossibility. a year over year, but let's say it was 8. Now remember that number was 965. I make it 8 and it goes to 1,668,000. Now consider, now you can say, well, that's not bad, but wait a second. Your last year's income, your last year's burn rate before retirement was $499,000. That's what you consumed. So how many years will 1,668,000 last if you had the same burn rate? Which is why, as Mart said, people's income, professionals' income must drop at retirement age because they need the money to last. Now, that's the natural order of things until you intercede. So I'm going to take out the return for a second. Remember, now to hold on to these numbers, that first number at 5, the number at 8 is 1,668,000. The number at 5 was 965, right? So that's our starting point. Now I'm going to take the return out entirely, just so you could see again that the amount of money that you all put in the deal, if you were somebody who was 30 and looking over 35, and you started at 5% savings rate, and your income went up at 5 and your consumption went up at 5, right? 451 is what you put in the deal. Now here's the question du jour. Let's assume for a moment that I'm right, and you end up looking like 99.9% of all the clients that we have in Currence. And your burn rate still goes up, but it only goes up at 3. So every year into the future, your income, your consumption is still going to rise. It's going to rise at 3. Your income is going up at 5. So what I'd like you to do, because we have the ability to do this on this call, I'd like you to write in the chat what you think the number is. It's 451. That's the amount of money you put in the deal with 5 and 5. I want you to put in the chat a number that you think it's going to be if your income goes up at 5 net after tax and your consumption is going up at only 3. So let's see how that goes. And hopefully I gave the instructions in a way that people know what they're doing.
Yeah, throw some numbers in there. Just
Don't be
any wild
shy.
guess.
You'll all be
Nope, nope.
wrong, but don't
There
feel
we
bad.
go. Thanks, Todd.
1.3
1.3
million, good.
million.
2, good.
Cindy, 2 million. Ethan,
1.5.
1.5 million. Dave
3
Wyatt,
Dr. 6,
15,
and that's pretty interesting guess. Let's see what
3
happens.
million. I think Dave says 1.5 million. Okay.
Okay, let's work off of that.
D
Double.
Joe
Joe
says
said
double.
double. So
Okay.
double would be what? 800, but it's actually 3.2 million because I actually clicked by accident.
Oh, okay.
It's 3 point, that, by the way, that's without a return. That's your money in the deal. If you look, what's happening is the amount of annual savings is going up geometrically. So you went from literally 451, your savings going into the deal, to 3.2 million. Now that's without a return.
No return, yeah.
No return. So let's go back to 5. You remember what was the number when it was 8? It was 1,000,006, right? The other way. Let's see 5. That's $5.8 million right there. So the point here is, without assuming more risk, you could have multiples of what you would have had trying to chase return in a structure that fundamentally is flawed.
And that is a mind-boggling thing for most people to wrap their head around. When you can say the savings rate is exponentially more important than the rate of return.
Absolutely. And by the way,
And
Mark,
it's my, when people say it, like it's a big wow. It's an aha
yeah.
moment.
Well, saying it without evidence is kind of hard for people to get their arms around. But I mean, and actually, let me leave it at 5 for a second. Let's just say that your burn rate goes up at 4 instead of 5 or 3. Well, that's still, let me get rid of the 5% here. That's still $2 million. That's a heck of a lot more than $450,000. It's 4 times as much, right?
Mhm.
So Again, at 5%, 3.6. These are life-changing numbers. And let's go back to the 3 example, 3 burn rate increase versus the 5 income increase. What if you actually could get 8%? And we're not saying you can, but consider if Mart and I are suggesting, actually more than suggesting, that the structure of your cash flow is the dominant factor and investment return is secondary. If you actually were successful getting the return, you'd be $8.8 million. That buys a lot of real estate. It buys a lot of investments. It buys more practices. It does a lot for you, all of which creates more cash flow, more free cash flow that's not needed for current lifestyle. And so that means either you can retire earlier or retire when you expected to with way more money. This is a sea change difference in the outcomes for every single person on this call. And by the way, it doesn't matter what your age is.
Yeah.
So let me just speak to that for a second because I don't know the ages of the people on the call. But let's say that you're rounding the clubhouse turn, you're 55, 60, and now you've accumulated some money and you're figuring out what retirement looks like. Well, the most dangerous thing about retirement is that every day is a Saturday. And you're not commuting to the office and spending your time. That's like, on my Saturdays, I go to Costco. And it's amazing to me how every time I go to Costco, my cart is filled with $400 plus of stuff, some of which I don't even need. But it's like without the structure of cash flow, even retirement, and you have multiple checks coming in, like you went from 2 paychecks, a husband and wife, to maybe 4, 6, or 8, depending on your income. You have required minimum distributions from your qualified plans. You may have a buyout from your practice. You'll have Social Security, 2 checks. Like all those things are coming in. It creates chaos, but it's so easy to consume the money. It's literally beyond belief. So whether you're young accumulating or older getting ready, getting set to end your career, pass it on to somebody else, organizing and structuring your cash flow is the single most important decision you can make, because without cash flow, all of the brilliant things that Mart would like to do for you relative to structure and design and evidence-based strategy is relevant. It just doesn't make it happen, right? So what I did here was I went past, it's all going to move out of the way. There we go. And so I did the math example here. Okay. So I don't have to do that again. Okay. So whether you still have 30 years before you retire, you make 200,000 per year or something less, so you're able to keep your spending at half your increase in income over that time period. The point is the opportunity to reach financial freedom faster is in the accumulation. And the accumulation will not happen unless you have the proper structure and support of your cash flow. And it can happen with very little effort, and you can continue to live the life you are now currently living today. So the Currence reservoir, as we designed it, acts as a behavioral speed bump to your spending. And savings becomes the default instead of consumption. And in this world, spending becomes a conscious choice, not an automatic behavior. So as your income increases, your consumption tends to increase at a slower rate. And cash flow accumulation happens. And that's where the opportunities lie for you to accelerate and achieve financial freedom faster. So Currence puts you, each of you, in control of your financial choices. So I have a brief little video. Give me a thumbs up if I got the sound here.
The way you spend and save today is a grind.
No?
Keeping day-to-day
Yep.
cash and checking
That's good.
accounts, funneling earnings in and saving what's left when you can. Accumulation takes time and effort. Currence is here to change that. We're a money management platform that reroutes how you spend and save to unlock the potential of your cash flow. By putting savings first and moving all available cash through a central FDIC insured account called the Reservoir, Currence helps you choose how you spend, seamlessly collaborate with your financial professional, and save up to 600% more than the national average. The system is easy to set up. Just input the cash flowing in and schedule what needs to go out, allowing every extra dollar to accumulate automatically. Soon, it all runs on autopilot. With more control and savings, you can focus on creating new passive income streams to achieve financial freedom faster. It's really that simple. Currents. LiveCurrents.com.